Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's private estate, is where the eyes of the world are turning to today as Volodymyr Zelenskyy began his meeting with the U.S. president on location at 7:30 p.m. CET. Ukrainian president will present his 20-point revised peace plan. What will come out of this meeting, and could the fate of the war be decided before the new year? To discuss this, Bohdan Nahaylo, editor-in-chief of the Kyiv Post, joins me on the program tonight. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining. What a day.
Good evening.
So,
can I just add before you ask your question that Brigitte Bardot supported the first animal protection shelter in Kyiv, and she supported Ukraine in 2022 when Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine, and in 2014 2012, I think, she wrote a letter to President Yanukovych, expressing her concern about the way he was running things. So, she's a film star, but she has a good name in Ukraine.
Thank you so much for this memento. Definitely an important day, not only in the world of politics. So let's jump into the most recent. Let's take a look at some of the quotes that were said during the presser right before the meeting started, when we saw President Trump and President Zelenskyy on the doorstep of Mar-a-Lago. Putin is very serious about peace. That's what Donald Trump said. Do you think that after the conversations that were held, there is a possibility that this is true, or is Putin playing Trump as he did the West?
We've heard from Putin the last month reiterating what he's been saying for years, that he wants all or nothing, that give me everything I want, or I won't sue for peace. His press conference on the 19th of December, where he made it very clear that he'll continue the war unless he gets what he wants. The so-called historical lands of Russia. Is Poland a historical land? In the 19th century, it belonged to the Russian Empire. Where does it begin and where does it stop? He keeps going on about this, and Trump acts like an idiot and pretends he doesn't know history and pretends this is okay. I mean, what struck me today when I watched this meeting in Florida is the moral equivocation that Trump excels in. He equates Ukraine with Russia. A journalist asks him tonight, what about the bombings over Christmas, the very heavy bombings on Kyiv and other cities? What does this signify? Is Russia interested in peace? And he says, well, Ukraine is doing the same. Aren't they bombing Russia? I've heard that there have been attacks, so I will maybe discuss with Zelenskyy who's behind it. It's the moral equivocation. He doesn't make a distinction between the aggressor, the imperialist, and the defender, a European country defending itself. And this is what is disgusting. So when I watched it tonight, hoping against hope that perhaps there would be a different tone, given the strong European support and Canadian support behind Zelenskyy, that perhaps there would be a slightly different tone in Trump's statements, especially as he's under such heavy attacks at home, Epstein, the economy, falling ratings, etc., etc. But no, it's the same line, the kind of you have to give, he has to give, but we expect you to give more. The old sort of story behind the scene of he has the cards, I have the cards, you don't have the cards, Zelenskyy. Pathetic start.
We also heard some more from Mr. Trump. He said security agreements will be strong. What kind of security agreements are we looking at? Do we have any potential guesses about what could that be? What would Donald Trump have in mind?
I think it's all words at this stage. The only sure security guarantees are coming from Europe, as long as the Americans play along. The Europeans, with Germany and France, Poland, and others in the lead, they're prepared to sort of put their money and weapons where their mouth is. Trump is saying this, and I don't think he really means it unless Ukraine makes major concessions, that is, gives away a third of Ukraine and the Zaporizhzhia AS to joint control by Russians, Americans, and Ukrainians on Ukrainian territory. You know, I mean, what he's saying is basically, yeah, we're willing to give you support, but you give in, you cave into Russia's demands and to what I've already negotiated or what Putin would like from me. Note the bottom line that is coming out more and more from Trump and Witkoff and the like. There's prosperity in store for Ukraine. You make the right deal, and this is going to be really good for your future economically, meaning it's going to be good for America. Europe's going to pay. We're going to get the dividends in America, which we'll share with Russia. I mean, you know, we can't be fooled. We have to read between the lines and know what he's actually saying and what he means.
We have to read between the lines, and this is exactly what we're talking on the program. But we have not only heard from President Trump, we also heard after the talk, which according to the Kremlin took about an hour between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. We've heard from Kremlin foreign policy aide Ushakov, who said Putin and Trump think Ukraine needs to make a decision on Donbas without delay. Does this mean that the decision between Washington and the Kremlin was already made when it comes to what happens to Donbas, and now Ukraine will be pushed to either reject it and continue fighting without the U.S. support? How are we supposed to read into this statement?
I think you're right, and it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding by Trump and his cohorts about what this involves. Ukraine is and has said repeatedly prepared to go for a ceasefire along the existing lines, right? But Russia is pressing for Ukrainian unilateral evacuation from all of the Donbas region, which means all the defensive lines that Ukraine has built up in the last 3 or 4 years. They're very strong defensive lines, which the Russians haven't been able to penetrate, which would mean, you know, leaving Ukraine open again to another attack in a year or 2 or 3 from Russia once Europe has got fed up and America has turned away from Ukraine. So Ukrainians are not stupid. They don't want to agree to this. And Trump is pretending that this is just an issue of, well, they've got it, they keep hold of it. But it's not just what they've got, the Russians. It's the additional territory where the defensive lines are now. You know, Zelenskyy has said we will not de jure legally accept the occupation and the acquisition as occurred with Crimea, say, of Ukrainian territory. We will agree to a ceasefire, and the future will decide what will happen eventually by diplomatic means, not war means. But Trump is basically playing into Moscow's hands by saying, give them everything they want and be happy with what you've got. We'll support you. We're going to get a huge chunk of economic dividends from helping you in any case, but be happy with what you've got and be quiet.
But following what you just said, I mean, do you think that Ukraine could potentially really believe that those security guarantees are going to materialize when the need arrives, when the need occurs? I mean, is it fair to ask Ukraine to be able to trust the West, especially considering the Budapest Memorandum, then the failed Minsk Agreement? I mean, we've seen this pattern happening over and over again. So what security guarantee could be enough at this point to make Ukraine go and say, listen, we agree, let's sign?
Look, to put it crudely, not diplomatically, if there is full-hearted support from Europe, from the countries that matter in terms of diplomatic, financial, and military clout, that probably is enough. And, Europe will also have to face up to the fact that the America is drifting away. And even if Trump is somehow removed for health reasons or other reasons, there are other, even more threatening and frightful perspectives with Vance taking over, who is even more rigid in his pro-Russian, anti-European, anti-Ukrainian stance. So Europe has to get its act together to stand strong. And what is encouraging about this meeting in Florida is that Zelenskyy has gone with full support from Europe and Canada in going into these discussions with Trump. Trump is aware of this. He knows he wants to be the only player. I'm the only one who decides, as he thinks. But that's not what the world is about anymore. Maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half, when Europe was sluggish, much of Europe was sluggish in supporting Ukraine. But right now, with Germany activated, with France, with Poland, with Scandinavian countries, Finland, I think Ukraine is in a stronger position to hold its ground than it ever was before during this war.
It brings to mind the recent words of Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who said that this could potentially be the end of Pax Americana. Just before we go, really shortly, we've heard from President Zelenskyy, who on his X platform posted on December 26th, a lot can be decided before the new year. Do you share the same belief as President Zelenskyy?
Well, we'll see today, but I don't expect too much. But again, the ball is now in Europe's court. Let's be honest. Trump is preoccupied with his own domestic problems, with his Epstein issues, falling ratings, etc. He would like to get a quick win, a quick coup in Ukraine, but Ukraine is not ready for that. I mean, too many people have died. Too much destruction has happened, and now Europe has woken up in this last year, and especially in the last 6 months. And Poland has been among those who has always told them, look, wake up, this is, and fortunately, Britain, France, Germany, Scandinavia, Finland, as I've said, are strongly behind Ukraine. And that coalition of the willing is strong. And we have to rely on that and not so much on today's Washington. Hopefully, maybe things will change in Washington in a year or 2 or 3's time, but not at the moment.
Thank you very much. Bohdan Nahaylo, Editor-in-Chief of Kyiv Post, was my guest on the show. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
And so this would be all the latest news now. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Klaudia, Czerwińska, and please do stay tuned here to TVP World, because we will be bringing you more details and latest developments on the meeting currently taking place in Florida between President Trump and President Zelenskyy. So stay tuned and good night.